Welcome everyone to part 3 of the ANA Project Implementation webinar series on reporting. And we really want to extend a big welcome and congratulations to our new 2013 grantees who are on this webinar. We look forward to getting to know you. This webinar is being presented by the Eastern Region Training and Technical Assistance Center, which is a resource of the Administration for Native Americans. We are recording this webinar, and it should be available on our website at www.anaeastern.org in about 2 weeks. We ask that you call in to the toll-free number that you've been provided so that you'll be able to easily ask questions at the end of the webinar. You can also type them in on the chat in the box that's visible on your control panel. We'll answer those questions at the end of this webinar during a question and answer period. A copy of the PowerPoint was sent out earlier today. If you didn't get a copy of it, let us know and we'll send it out after the webinar has concluded.
Good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Parisian, and I too would like to congratulate and welcome all the new grantees to the ANA family and wish you success in your endeavors to make positive change in your Native communities. I am the training specialist for the Eastern Region Training and Technical Assistance Center, and I've been working as a technical assistance provider for the past 15 years. During that time, I've conducted project planning and development trainings, pre-application trainings, post-award trainings, worked on impact evaluation teams, assisted in curriculum development, and have also provided applicants during the application development process with technical assistance, as well as worked with grantees in the area of grant management. I'm an enrolled member of the Chippewa Cree tribe from Rocky Boy, Montana. My co-presenter today is Candy Carmi. Candy?
Again, thank you all for joining us today. I'm Candy Carmi, and I'm the Technical Assistance Specialist for the Eastern Region. I've been working as a technical assistance provider for the past 7 years, essentially doing just about everything that Robert does except for doing it wearing high heels. I'm a member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. Some of you on this webinar may be unfamiliar with the Administration for Native Americans. It's a program located within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services under the Administration for Children and Families. ANA serves all Native Americans, including federally recognized tribes, American Indian and Alaska Native organizations, Native Hawaiian organizations, and Native populations throughout the Pacific Basin. ANA promotes self-sufficiency for Native Americans by providing discretionary grant funding for community-based projects and training and technical assistance to eligible tribes and Native organizations in 3 program areas: social and economic development strategies, also known as SEDS, Native languages, and environmental regulatory enhancement. You can find out a lot more about ANA on their website at the URL on your screen. So please visit their site if you haven't done so already. And matter of fact, I'd recommend that you bookmark their site. As mentioned earlier, the Eastern Region Training and Technical Assistance Center is a resource of the Administration for Native Americans. We are a contractor headquartered outside of Washington, D.C. in Western Virginia. We are one of 4 technical assistance providers that provide help to both applicants and grantees. The Eastern Region covers all states from North Dakota straight south down to Texas, and all states to the east of that line. Both Robert and I are Eastern Region technical assistance providers, along with Rondell Clay, who is our director. If you visit our website, and our homepage is up on your screen, you'll find out more information about us on our upcoming trainings, and you can also like us on our Facebook page. ANA holds webinars every Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on a number of different topics. All ANA webinars, like this one, are recorded. So if you go to the link on your screen, you can find a full listing of previously recorded webinars that you can view at your convenience. You'll also see a listing of upcoming webinars, and you'll have the ability to sign up for those that currently have registration open.
This webinar series that you see on the screen above was designed to supplement the post-award training, not to supplant it. As you know, new grantees are required to attend the post-award training, which is held in each region. As ANA is committed to helping grantees have successful projects by providing technical assistance, it was decided to create this series of webinars to help you get your project jump-started and to serve as a reference tool should you have questions during project implementation. The first part of the series was on planning and organizing and was held last month on October 10th. The second part of the series was held 2 weeks ago on October 24th on regulations and cost principles. If you missed either of the first two webinars, I would definitely recommend that you take the time to view them when you get a chance. Also, please remember to register for Part 4 of the series, which will be held in 2 weeks. The topics that we're going to be covering today include a recap of the first two webinars, why do we have to do reports, an overview of ANA reports, information needed for reporting, utilizing reports as a project management tool, reporting results to keep your community and leadership informed, and finally we'll have a presentation by Mr. Reggie Cadat from the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa on reporting from a grantee's standpoint. What we won't be going over today is how to use grant solutions. We also won't be going over the step-by-step instructions for completing the Objective Progress Report or the Standard Form 425. We have included resources at the end of this webinar that you can reference to find more information on completing these reports. However, we will be going over the step-by-step instructions for all reports during our upcoming post-award training. Let's begin with a recap of the first two webinars. As mentioned, planning and organizing was the first in our series. It stressed familiarizing yourself with the application at the start of your project. You shouldn't just skim your application, but really read it and make notes on the application. Read and familiarize yourself with your budget. You may not be a finance person, but you need to be aware of what your approved project costs are and when they're going to be expended. Read your OWP thoroughly. Why do you have to do all of this? Let's say your application indicates that you need to collect baseline data immediately, so you don't want to find that out a few months into the project. By reading through your application, you can also determine what tracking tools that you need for your project. Do you need to track attendees, meetings, project participants? If so, create spreadsheets or folders at the beginning of the project so that you can readily fill in the information as you go along. Again, it's much easier to start collecting information from day one rather than trying to recreate numbers or attendance records when you are preparing your reports. Part 1 also went over creating a grant file and the information you need to include in that file. So definitely go back and view those webinars if you haven't already created a grant file. Project schedules were discussed and the importance of being on top of key project dates. And finally, they went over creating a communications plan to keep project stakeholders and your leadership informed on your project's progress. Part 2 was regulations and cost principles and the importance of having basic knowledge of financial regulations and cost principles to assist you in proper management of a project as well as avoiding compliance issues. Part 2 of the webinar series provided a basic overview of the regulations and cost principles that govern ANA awards. In addition, it introduced you to the ACF playbook for oversight of ANA funding awards, the HHS grants policy statement. Knowing what is expected for successful management of a grant helps to keep grants in compliance. Again, be sure to view those webinars if you haven't already done so.
Robert. So why do you have to do reports? Well, project reporting is a grant requirement, and it enables ANA to see if your project is progressing as approved. You can also use your reports as a project management tool to see if you're on track with your project. If your activities are progressing on schedule and you're spending money as projected, it should be evident when you review your completed reports. If you're falling behind on your activities, you need to determine what the cause is and make any course adjustments. If your activities are not progressing as scheduled, you should also see your cost being less than projected. So what do you need to do to get back on track? Sometimes the cause can be something simple as activities got pushed back along with the related cost. Other times the reason and the solution can be much more complex. If you've encountered project stumbling blocks, let your program specialists know and provide them information on how you plan to overcome them. So once you've completed your reports, you have data that can be shared with both leaders and stakeholders. Sharing this data with your community and with your partners helps ensure continuous buy-in. The last bullet, your reports also serve as a record of your project's progress. ANA has identified through impact evaluations that staff turnover is one of the top project challenges. I visited a grantee that lost their project director in the middle of the project. The reports from the previous director were so detailed and comprehensive, it was really easy to see for the new hires where the project left off and what remained to be completed on that project. There's some more reasons to do reports. One of your assigned program specialist tasks is to review your reports. If you're falling behind or if they see an issue, they can contact you to provide assistance. They might also determine that you need more in-depth help and have someone, a technical assistance provider such as Robert or myself, reach out to you. Again, the rationale is that ANA wants you to have a successful project. So if we can provide help, we want to do that as soon as possible. Submitting your reports on a timely basis allows you to access your grant funds. If you're late with reports, it could result in your funds being restricted. In addition, late reporting can result in an audit finding, which can adversely impact future organizational funding. So on the third bullet, your reports also help you recognize when you might need to request grant amendments. This topic will be covered in the next webinar in the series, so make sure to check that one out. And lastly, accurate and thorough reports facilitate preparation for an impact evaluation. You'll have all the information readily available to answer questions about your project and to provide any cumulative numbers.
Now let's go over an overview of the 3 required ANA reports. The Objective Progress Report, or OPR, is a picture of what occurred during a project quarter. The first section of the report is based on your approved objective work plan and is formatted so that you enter information each quarter on the status of project activities. After completing 4 reports, you'll have an OPR that reflects 1 year of activity completion, leveraged resources secured during the year, partnerships created, impact indicator progress, and staffing information. It also contains information on how you're progressing with your expenditures, so you'll need to have a copy of the standard form 425 on hand when you prepare your report. The second report is the Financial Status Report, standard form 425, and it is the financial picture of what has occurred during your project. Now, both the OPR and the SF 425 are due quarterly, 30 days after the end of each quarter. The OPR is submitted electronically through Grant Solutions, and the SF 425 is submitted electronically via the Division of Payment Management, or DPM. The last report is the Objective Evaluation Report, and it is the final project report. The OER is only done once during the project period and is due 90 days after the end of the project period. It is a compilation of all the OPRs submitted for your project period and is prepared using fourth quarter OPRs from previous years. Getting ready for your first report. At the beginning of each project year, there's some preparatory steps you need to take before starting your reports. First, compare the Grant Solutions OPR to your approved OWP. Although the OPR report is pre-populated in Grant Solutions with your objective work plan, it is a good idea to review the hard copy OWP to make sure that it matches what's in the Grant Solutions OPR. This should be done at the beginning of each budget year. In almost all cases, the OWP was modified during the negotiations held with your organization prior to you being awarded your grant. This important double check ensures that you are filling in the correct information based on final approved documents. If you discover that the approved OWP is not what is loaded in the OPR, you need to contact your program specialist as soon as possible. Secondly, as with the objective work plan, make sure that you compare your approved budget to the budget on your notice of grant award. Typically, as grant applications are written, a number of different versions of the project budget will be prepared. Make sure that you are working with the correct version. Also, the SF425 is not generated within Grant Solutions. It is part of the Division of Payment Management. So it's important to verify that the amount listed in the DPM system is what appears on your notice of grant award. Third, look in your application to find the impact indicators and the information as to how they will be tracked. They should be located in the Outcomes Expected section of your application. Create tracking sheets and make sure you update them on a regular basis. Fourth, the SF424A is needed to enter each quarter's projected expenditures for the budget period in the OPR. So you'll need to locate that form and make sure that it matches your approved budget amount. Again, sometimes the SF424A is not updated during grant negotiations.
As recommended in the first webinar in this series on planning, your grant file is going to play a key role in completing your reports. So you want to have it handy when completing your OPR, and more specifically, have the following items ready. A listing of all activities completed along with any tracking tools you created. You want to have numbers of participants, numbers of trainings or classes held, number of curriculum items completed, environmental codes developed, etc. All of this should be on hand to complete the sections of the report where this information is requested. We really can't stress enough the importance of keeping this information in your grant file and tracking activities starting on day one of your project. You'll find it really makes completing your reports easier. Second, have that impact indicator tracking sheet handy to report on your impact indicator progress. Thirdly, get a copy of the completed SF425 from your finance department so you can complete the portion of your report related to quarterly expenditures. Fourth, you'll want documentation on partnerships and leveraged resources secured during the quarter. Make sure that you back that up with documentation in your grant file, such as letters of commitment, partnership agreements, invoices for time and services rendered, etc. And the last bullet on your screen, make a note of that. If you're a new language grantee, your first OPR was due October 30th. ANA has extended this date to November 21st. Again, that is just for this year.
Now let's go over a few OPR reporting tips. The first is be extremely diligent in providing a detailed explanation of all of your activities that need to be reported on each quarter. Many grantees only provide the statement completed, which does not provide the program specialist with the specifics of what went into completing that activity that you are reporting on. Be as specific as possible whenever reporting on your activities. Ensure that you closely check out the federal expenditures and non-federal share expenditures for each quarter to verify their accuracy. It is not only finance's responsibility to ensure correctness of the Standard Form 425. The project director also has the responsibility to ensure that federal expenditures and non-federal share amounts are correct and match program records and documents. Third, the status of activities should always be reported accurately. And if an activity is not completed, never list completed on the form. There are no negative connotations to not completing an activity on time. And in fact, by listing activities correctly, this allows for ANA program specialists to provide timely assistance should it become necessary. Fourth, utilize the post-award manual checklist for OPR reporting as an important double check. And lastly, never wait until the last minute. It is essential that you do your report on an ongoing basis. As stated before, it can be worked on as activities get worked on. A crisis management situation only provides you with the potential to submit your reports late, not report correctly, or potentially receive an audit finding or exception. Information needed to complete your SF-425. Of course, in preparation for reporting, you have already been making sure on a regular basis that the costs allocated to your project are correct. Routinely going over project expenditures by reviewing accounting records, such as budget to actual, will eliminate any surprises when you prepare your reports, which could possibly delay your report submission. Non-federal share documentation is handled by both your finance department and your project director. If costs are from in-kind services from existing staff, the finance department will figure those costs out. If you have any third-party in-kind services provided or volunteer services provided, then the project director should have this documented in the grant file and the dollar amounts for services provided for that specific quarter. After each service is provided, documentation should be immediately collected from the source and put into the grant file with a note as to what quarter these amounts relate to. Ensure the finance department has all copies of non-federal share documentation that you receive from third parties. Drawdowns and expenditures, for the most part, depending on how large your organization is, will normally be handled by the finance department. If a program person makes the drawdowns, ensure that the finance department immediately receives a copy of any drawdowns made. Also ensure that any documents that go into the program grant file also go into the finance grant file, as they hold the official copy of the grant file within their office. Keep in mind, as mentioned in the Part 2 webinar, you only draw down enough funds to cover current expenses. You are not allowed to have more than 3 days cash on hand. Maintaining a good working relationship with your finance department should go without saying. The finance department is key in ensuring that official grant files are maintained, that the SF-425s are submitted, and that expenditures are paid when drawdowns are made. Always make sure that they have the current project budget, especially if you make any budget modifications. Information needed to complete your OER. The objective evaluation report is a recap of your entire project. You essentially combine the information from all your fourth quarter OPR reports. In the parts of the form where numbers are collected, you will enter a cumulative amount for the entire project. The OER is only completed once, and it is due 90 days after the end of your project period. Important to note is for grantees that have just finished a prior grant, do not enter any information into the OER form on grant solutions until ANA notifies you that issue related to grant solution have been fixed. For future grantees, projects ending on 7/31/2013, your OERs are due November 30th, and projects ending 9/29 are due December 30th. Using reports as a management tool. Review your OWP on a regular basis. Your objective work plan is your project blueprint and should be referred to daily. The final approved copy of your OWP should be provided to each member of your staff who are assigned activities. Make sure that you are completing activities per the dates you have listed in your OWP. If you run into an issue delaying your project progress, take a look at your application to see if a possible solution is in your contingency plan section of the application. If you did not address that issue, what can you do to get your project back on track? Well, there are a variety of resources available to you to determine the proper solution to whatever issue arises in your project. These resources include your community, other stakeholders, project staff, your program specialist, or your TA provider. Remember that your OPR is a fluid document. By that, we mean that grantees can go into grant solutions and input data on a daily basis or as needed. It is not a document that should only be open at the end of the quarter. It should be filled in as activities occur. By making this part of your routine, you are not only ensuring that your report is accurate and up to date, but it is then not a chore at the end of the quarter. Another plus is you do not have to worry about rushing to get your report in on time and neglecting important information. Documentation, documentation, documentation. When managing any type of grant or contract, it is critical that documentation is available to back up the information provided in your reports. All documentation should be held in the official and program grant files. This information will eventually be reviewed during impact evaluations to verify your deliverables. Documentations of non-federal share, leveraged resources, partnerships, and activity completion should be maintained as you progress. Make sure to track the number of project participants, to keep sign-in sheets and dates of any meetings. Again, it's much easier to manage your project if you are documenting the project as you go along instead of trying to recreate information so that you have everything available for your impact evaluation. Become familiar with your budget and monitor drawdowns and expenditures. You want to make sure that only those costs associated with your grant are being charged to your project. You'll also be able to determine if your spending is on track with the project budget and make any course corrections if necessary. If you spent less money for the quarter than projected, why did that happen? You'll need to note that on your objective progress report. Stay current on activities, and being aware of your expenditures will enable you to determine that your project is on track. Conversely, it will be your indicator to determine if you need a grant amendment or perhaps technical assistance. Finally, should you note any issues during your project implementation, let your program specialist know. If you believe you may need an amendment, let the program specialist know as soon as possible. Having your reports current and thorough will expedite approval of your request.
Once you've completed your OPR, you now have data available to provide to your community. It's important to share that information on a regular basis to ensure buy-in and promote sustainability for your project. When we talk about community, we're referring to everyone who has some part in seeing that your project is a success. That includes your governing body, staff, stakeholders, your general community, partners, and volunteers. Each of these groups play a large part in your overall success. At the end of each quarter, you might want to develop a short summary report to send out to segments of your community. Mention their participation and how it helped you in accomplishing what you did. Obviously, your governing body should have a report that is more thorough than what you share with others, but how and what you provide is ultimately up to the project staff. By using your report data as a tool for communication, you strengthen your project and your potential for getting assistance with sustainability after the project period ends. To share information on your project, you can utilize social media, and websites to keep your community up to date on your project. I've seen some pretty creative web pages devoted to A&A projects. If your organization has an electronic newsletter, ask to submit an article about your project. Ask local TV and newspapers for PSA spots so you can highlight your project. You'll really be amazed at the comments and volunteerism this type of marketing can generate for you. Coincidentally, when we were preparing this webinar, I was reading my tribal newspaper and saw this article. The Oneida Nation of Wisconsin was the recipient of a New Seeds Award. So they submitted this half-page article describing their project. They gave a brief overview of the project, their goals, objectives, and their target project participants. By doing this right away when you receive your award, and by keeping your community updated on your progress, you keep the community continuously aware of your project. This is also a great way to drum up support for your project, and it also has the potential to recruit project participants. Robert and I have given you an overview of reports. However, we don't ever have to complete them. So we wanted to give you a current grantee's perspective on preparing reports. Reggie Cadat is the Ojibwe Language Revitalization Project Director at the Red Cliff Early Childhood Center located in northern Wisconsin. The Red Cliff Early Childhood Center operates an early Head Start program serving children from 6 weeks to 3 years old, and a Head Start program serving children from 3 to 5 years old. Reggie works with a fluent speaker of the Ojibwe language to assist the teachers and support staff with speaking the Ojibwe language to all enrolled children. Reggie also works with parents and families of these children so they can continue speaking the Ojibwe language at home. Reggie is responsible for all fiscal and grant management activities, including the development and submission of required reports to both A&A and the Red Cliff Tribal Council. We want to thank Reggie for joining us today, and welcome, Reggie.
Miigwech. Buju Ginawa, Reggie Cadat and Dijnakaz, Odawa Zagay Gunning and Dunjaba, Minawa, Misquabakong and Diane Nungum. Mayangun and Dodem. And the Nakio Ma Misquabakong, Oshkia Banuji ain't subject no ma gay with Gumigung. Bungin and Gadeshandan and Nanakian. My name is Reggie Cadat, and I work for the Red Cliff Early Childhood Center. I have been preparing reports for the past 13 years. I'm honored to be asked to speak about my reporting preparations, as I know that many of you probably have more experience at this than me. I would like to start by giving you some hints and tips on how to prepare for your quarterly reports. To begin with, I usually keep a daily journal or a planner book to help me organize my life. Time goes by so fast while working with these young children that it's very important for me to keep on task, both at work and at home. My daily journal consists of important daily, weekly, and monthly events. I prioritize my daily duties so that I know what needs to be done immediately and what can wait for a little while. It's very important for me to periodically review my objective work plan. This document is my roadmap that lets me know what I'm supposed to be doing, when I'm supposed to do it, and how to get her done. When I first started working on this particular grant, I reviewed the OWP with other project staff and employees here at the Red Cliff Early Childhood Center. This was very important for us to do here to ensure that everyone is on the same page and everyone knows what to expect from this project. We also submitted an article to our monthly newsletter to let the community know that we received the grant and were preparing to begin. We knew we were going to have weekly language tables, so I immediately began developing a spreadsheet to track attendance. These attendance records are vital to our project in terms of evaluating our expected results and benefits. Be sure to review what sort of data you will be collecting and maintain an organized filing system so you can access that data as need be. I never know exactly how my data is going to assist the ECC in terms of acquiring additional funding to assist with sustainability efforts of the project, so it's very important to keep an organized filing system. When I begin to prepare my objective progress reports, I review my daily journal to find out what I accomplished during the quarter. I gather all my data like attendance records, meetings attended, in-kind and financial figures, and other support that was given to the project. Reviewing my daily journal entries is the biggest help to me when I prepare my report. Good luck with your projects and your reports. Misael.
Thank you again, Reggie, for joining us and giving us some of your handy tips. We've gone over quite a bit of information today, so we wanted to provide you with some resources that you can refer to for additional information on what we've discussed. The first bullet is a webinar where you'll learn how to use grant solutions to report your project's progress. It was hosted by the ANA Alaska Region Training and Technical Assistance Center and had a lot of, it was basically a Q&A session. The next bullet on your screen is the post-award manual, and you can go to that URL and get a PDF copy of the post-award manual that will be used at the upcoming post-award trainings. And if you've already attended the post-award training, you could just download another copy of it. This is a great reference source and something that you should keep on hand. The third bullet is the HHS Grants Policy Statement. It's intended to make available in a single document the general terms and conditions of HHS discretionary grant and cooperative agreement awards. And the fourth bullet on your screen is the link to the ANA Grant Solutions Grantee Manual, where you can learn how to use grant solutions, including how to start your account and process amendments.
In closing, I'd just like to say that reporting is just not a funding agency's attempt to gather information from you. It has many important uses for ANA and for you, the grantee. Thorough and comprehensive reporting is a win-win for everyone. First off, reporting helps to track the project's progress and ensure that your project stays on task and within timelines. It provides an opportunity to keep open communications and get others involved with your project. It can be used as a tool to show the governing body the importance of what is being accomplished. It provides an opportunity for new partnerships to be formed, allows for project staff to be aware of when a grant amendment needs to be submitted, ensures that your funds are not restricted and that audits are clean in the areas of reporting, assists you in keeping up to date with your grant file, and helps you in preparing for an impact evaluation. Both the Objective Progress Report and the Standard Form 425 are reports that are due quarterly and need to be submitted 30 days after the completion of each quarter. You will have 4 per each budget year. We recommend that you work on your OPR throughout the quarter so that it doesn't become a chore and that you have to rush to complete it to get it in by the due date. Remember, late reporting is an audit finding, and you want to avoid an audit finding at all costs. A late reporting finding also has the potential to jeopardize future funding from other agencies. Also, late submittal of the Standard Form 425 can lead to your organization not being able to draw down funds until the reports are current. Lastly, not having your reports current will prevent processing of grant amendments. This will all be discussed on our next webinar when we discuss continuations and grant amendments. So please make sure to sign up for continuations and grant amendments webinar that will be held on November 21st.
Thanks, Robert.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Candy and Robert. That was very, very good. We're going to open up for questions right now. You can either type your questions into the question tab that is on your control panel, or if you have a microphone or are on the phone, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you and allow you to ask your question. Okay, we're going to get started with questions that have been typed in. We have a question from Laura Spann. Are we filling reports based on a calendar year quarter or project year quarter? Robert?
Actually, you're filling them on what you referred to as project year, but it's actually the budget year quarter that you're working on. So it would be the 12 months that your project is running for this first year or whatever year of the grant that you're in. And you will do that every year until your project ends.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. We'll give you guys a few minutes if there are people typing. I just want to remind everybody that I see one person has sent me an email regarding a copy of the PowerPoint, and we will definitely send that out to folks that registered late, as long as you send me a chat telling me that you need it. I have a statement here from Mia Strickland, and thank you, Mia, for joining us. Mia is the Director of the Division of Program Operations for ANA, and she wanted to add to Robert's comment and say that reports are quarterly until the end of the project period. And the due dates for those reports vary a little bit between language reporting due dates and SEDS reporting due dates, just because language grants start a month and a half before the SEDS and environmental grants do. Okay, moving on. We have a question from Sandra Whiteshield. If your grant covers many communities, how might you suggest keeping community involved and updated? We service 57 tribes, so should we try to access media in each community? Candy, do you want to take that one?
That might be one where you want to create a newsletter of some kind that you can prepare and then share with the various communities. You're going to definitely want to hit something, more than just a local tribal paper. A newsletter, perhaps emails of if you can create a listserv of participants and key people in those various tribes to send out information to. Again, getting out information about your project as you're implementing it really helps to keep the community invested and involved. There's nothing worse than one of us going out on an impact evaluation and talking to people, community members, and those community members telling us that they didn't know that the project existed. They had never heard about that ANA project. So even if it's baby steps of emails, creating listservs, newsletters. Robert, can you think of any other tips?
No, other than trying to maybe webinar or put it out on their websites within the organization and keep that information out to the public so they know what the website is.
And having that maybe even creating a web page on your website too that folks can reference. That way you'd be able to have it all in one place, and people would be able to go back and take a look at that and see what's going on with the project.
Okay, thank you, Robert and Candy. We have a follow-up question from Laura Spann. She has a language project. So, and if you remember, her initial question was regarding calendar year quarters or project year quarter. Her follow-on question is, so if our project started in August, then we need to file for our first quarter no later than November 30th. Robert?
That report date will come out from ANA, but I believe that is correct. October 30th, I believe, is the first date when it is due for the first 2 months. But I may be off on that, Rondell.
No, you're correct. The report, the first OPR was due October 30th for language grantees, only for language grantees, and that's because they start August 1st. However, there were some issues with the reporting module of Grant Solutions. And you should have received an email from your program specialist having you hold off while, on submitting that report until the reporting module got fixed. Now, they have pushed back submission of that report, and the new due date is November 21st. So if you have any questions, email your program specialist. And for those of you who had a program specialist that retired, right now, while the new program specialists are being trained, we need you to call the ANA Help Desk with any questions that you may have. Okay, let's move on. I hope that answered your question, Laura. Well, we've got a couple more follow-ons from Laura. So why don't, since we're on reporting dates, why don't we then keep up with Laura, and then we'll go back to some of the other questions that folks have had. First quarter equals August through October then, due 30 days later. The closing of the quarter, that first quarter, it's a short first quarter, and it ends actually September 30th for you, and that's why the report, that first quarter report, is due October 30th. Okay, now let's move on. Sarah Shepard has chimed in on the language grantee reports. Sarah is a program specialist at ANA. Thanks for being on the webinar, Sarah. If you are a new language grantee, then your due date is November 21st. Continuing grantee due dates remained October 30th. Thanks for the clarification, Sarah. Okay, so only new grantees have reports due on November 21st. The continuation, the people who had grants last year, language grants last year, and are in a continuation year, your report was due October 30th. So if you didn't get that report in, you need to do it ASAP. We have a, continuing on with the theme of when reports are due, Laura Dang has a question, and Laura, I'm going to assume that you're talking about some other grant than a language grant. If I'm wrong, could you type it in and let me know in the question box? Okay, oh, it is language. Well, okay. It says, when do we submit reports for quarter ending 9/30? When the project year starts on 9/30. Now that sounds to me as if you're talking about a SEDS grant. This is Laura Dang, not Laura Span, Laura Dang. Robert, do you want to talk about reporting deadlines for the first quarterly report for grants that are not language grants?
If they're not language grants, your first quarter would run from September 30th to December 31st, and your first report would be due January 30th, or 30 days after the end of that quarter. And for SEDS, environmental, that would be the reporting period. You'd go by your project period start and end date. If it started on 9/30, it's not going to, I'm not sure that that would really be a language grant then, unless it was.
No, this is a SEDS grant.
Okay, then that would be the starting and ending date on the SEDS reporting. It would be due October, or January 30th is when your first report will be due.
Okay, great. Thanks, Robert. Cindy Catches has put in a question. She's having some difficulty with grant solutions. Cindy, we can certainly guide you through any issues you may be having with grant solutions, but would prefer that you called into our 800 number, 888-221-9686, and we can help you with your individual problem with grant solutions.
And that's another reminder, Rondell, in Grant Solutions, where the grantees do their and enter their report. This for the new grantees, they might not. For the new language grantees, they might not have updated the November 21st. But typically, for all other grantees, it indicates when the reports are due.
As a resource, they can download the post-award manual at the ANA resource website, and it has a chart in there that tells you when all of your reports are due, whether you're a language or a SEDS or environmental grant. It's just that this first quarter of the year, because of some grant solution issues and other issues that had arisen earlier, that reporting has changed. After this initial first quarter, it'll go back to regular reporting periods, and you can find that in the post-award manual under the resource page that we showed you on the website.
Again, it looks like most of our questions here are focusing on the deadlines. Because Pete Upton had a question regarding the deadlines, and let me read that to you. If we were awarded September 30th, then our first reporting period would be January 30th, 2014 for the OPR. Is that correct? And we access the OPR from Grant Solutions website if we have registered on the Grant Solutions site. Robert?
Well, the answer to that is it's due on January 30th, but you would be reporting from September 30th through December 31st on your activities, which is your first quarter. But he is correct that he would have to have it submitted by January 30th for his first report.
Sarah also chimed in. Robert was talking about the chart that is located in the post-award manual. Sarah Shepard asked me to remind you all that you can review the deadlines for ANA reporting requirements on ANA's website at www.acf.gov/programs/ANA/reporting-requirements. So again, if you go to the ANA resource page, in the search you can type in reporting requirements, and you'll be able to get the dates. Okay, we have a Christina Clark, another program specialist from ANA, is going to say a few words. Christina?
I am.
That's what your boss said. Talking about reporting deadline information?
So I guess this information, I'm sorry if I'm a bit confused, this information is going out to those who are experiencing some of the challenges with grant solutions. So for those folks, your program specialist will be following up with you with an email letting you know when you can go into the system and start working on the reports, as well as providing some additional instruction on how to complete the OER. And then for everyone else on the call, just so you know that this information is meant for guidance and giving you background on how to complete the reports, but the reporting system is still not up and running yet. So it's not actually viewable for you to go in and look at your reports in the system right now. And then once that's available, you'll also be notified. But for most of you, your reports aren't due until January, so that shouldn't, it should definitely be up and running way before then.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christina. I appreciate it. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
That's okay.
Okay, we have a question. I'm going to unmute Sid Crew. Sid, do you want to ask your question?
No. Can you hear me?
Just barely.
Okay, I've been having trouble with my internet connection.
Oh, there you go. It's better.
Okay. Well, you know, my questions, I guess you answered them. I was I was wondering about, you know, our grant specialist, and I received an answer that it would be a couple weeks, but that will be after our reports are due. So I feel a little bit hanging here. But so you said to just call the help desk as I do the report?
You can call the help desk, or you can call your regional TNTA center. So you have two different avenues.
Okay, and our regional team would be, we're Western Region.
What Western Region? Yes. So Kaufman and Associates are your regional TA provider, and their contact information is listed on the ANA website under Training and Technical Assistance tab.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, one more question from Pete Upton, and then we're going to call it a day. We have definitely been on here for an hour. We started 5 minutes late, and it is 4:05 right now. So, the question from Pete: if you have activities assigned to a new hire and have not hired that position yet, but are working on the hiring, would you adjust your objective work plan? Robert?
You would have to call your program specialist to discuss it with them, but I think as far as the activities while you're still waiting for hiring, if you have somebody within your organization, the project director, if they're already hired, or somebody who understands what your project is going to do and you can get those activities done, by all means do so in advance rather than wait until the hiring so you don't automatically put yourself behind schedule.
Okay, great. Thank you, Robert. Well, everyone, it is time for us to bring this to a close. We appreciate everyone being on the webinar today. We look forward to working with all the Eastern Region grantees, and I know that those of you who are in the other regions, your training and technical assistance providers are also looking forward to working with you, as well as all the program specialists, primarily the program specialists. So thank you for joining us today. We do weekly webinars every Thursday. And we hope that you'll get into the habit, especially you new grantees, of taking part in the webinars that occur every Thursday. In 2 weeks, remember, Part 4, how to fill out grant amendments and do continuations, is going to be held. So please register for that webinar so that you complete the entire series. You can register on the ANA Alaska region website, which is www.ana.gov. anaalaska.org, or you can go to the ANA website to technical assistance page, and there'll be a link to the registration.